Hi, I'm Jim Accomando, and welcome to our next installment, actually our final installment of our video logs. Today we're actually going to talk about advocacy. This is probably our greatest aspect of our mission as far as I'm concerned. This is where we actually engage our families, our communities, all around our mission to advocate on behalf of all of our children. Who better to join me than our Vice President of Advocacy himself, Marques Ivey.
How you doing, everyone? Happy to be here.
Well, Marques, thanks for joining us. This is going to be a great video log. We're going to talk about this from a president's perspective. And many of our presidents are actually, like myself, will be reaching the end of our term. But we really want to talk about what's next as far as this video log series. And our presidents tend to be some of our greatest advocates.
Absolutely. Because
of the experience that they actually carry. So let's get started, everyone. So we usually begin with a leadership lesson, and today's leadership lesson really speaks to what's next, and as I mentioned, what's next in particular for our PTA presidents. So these are the individuals that really have been advocating in many cases for the life of their children's value in school. Both of my children went to Title I, my wife taught Title I, so there was always needs there, whether it's fans in the room in the summertime when it's 108 degrees in my wife's classroom, or it was just a decent playground that actually did not send your child to the hospital via an ambulance, which is what my daughter had when she actually fell off the slide. So in all of these cases, we find that throughout our history, we are using our voice to actually advocate on behalf of our children. At PTA, we do a great job at actually honing in on how to use that voice not just in the classroom, but in the community, with our boards of education, within our district. Hopefully, as your horizon broadens, you might be going to your state capital, etc. And so as you get further entrenched in PTA, and your experience grows, and that's what many of our state presidents have. And now for many of them, maybe their children are no longer in public school system. And if they're actually going to the what next mentality as far as what's next after being a state president, I would suggest advocacy is probably a great resource that we can leverage them in. Whether it's advocacy to come back to their state and actually do a lot of training and work with folks, whether it's an advocacy to go back to their own communities, back to where it all began for many of them, see what's going on in the sense of the school facilities, again, the curriculum, the budgets. It's budget season right now in most districts. Even though you're no longer going to be the president in 3, 4, 5 months from now, the best thing you can actually do is come back and actually re-engage yourself with the advocacy portion of our mission. So many times as president, we get into almost running a small business, if you will, depending on the size of your state. It could be a small, medium, or an extremely large business unit. But for me, my passion is definitely advocacy, leveraging that voice and actually helping others leverage their voices. So let's get started. Advocacy is really at the heart of what we do, Marques. Of course, it's at the heart of your position. Marques, we're going to kind of run this as a Q&A. I've got a few questions for you, if you can. Help out our audience, our presidents, in the sense of responses. Marques, I hear so many people say that they think others are fearful of the word advocacy. It's a scary word. Or the act of advocating. Why do you think that is?
You know, I think when you look at advocacy, I think people think of the word policy. And I think the simplest way to think of policy is to look at policy as your goals, the things that you want to achieve, the things that are important to your particular group. And in order to show that these things are important, you have to advocate. So what is advocating? Advocating is simply using your voice in order to affect change, using your voice for purposes of influencing those that have power. And simply put, you do it as a parent every single day. I did it as a parent every single day. I'd come to school and see if my son's not doing well. I want to know why he's not doing well and what can I do to help. That's the most simplest form of advocacy. And what we do here at Legislative Conference is just that. We advocate. We use our voice to advocate. We tell folks, here's what's hurting. Here's what you can do to help us, simply put. So don't be afraid of it. Use it.
I like that a lot. Because the word voice, everybody can relate back to that. And of course, leveraging, virtually just speaking up on behalf of your own children is where it begins. I like that. So let's really use the word voice from now on.
Voice, I like it.
How do you think state PTAs can help the volunteers in their state understand the power of their voice as advocates?
Here's my belief on this, and it's going to sound silly. I think every state should have something that's called practicing advocacy. I think you should have a class, whether it's your conference, your convention, or when you do your annual meetings, practicing advocacy, where you bring in someone simply to just help you go through various scenarios on advocacy. And it can be something silly. You bring your child into a store, you're trying to get them to choose between an orange or an apple, and you have to tell them what's most important to you. Why is this orange important to you more than the apple? I know that sounds silly, but practicing it. If you have the ability to practice it when you go out, it's going to be natural.
If you can tell us a little bit about some of our most urgent priorities, especially for state PTA.
Well, we have 10 priorities that we've put together with respect to our public policy agenda. And I think really the first two are probably, I think, the most important. Number one would be bringing parents and families to the table. Number two would be fostering a safe environment, a safe school environment. And the first one really deals with making sure that we comply with ESSA, E-S-S-A, Every Student Succeeds Act, and making sure that we fund these statewide education centers, if you will. And I think those are probably the two biggest points with respect to bringing parents to the table. You have to get them to the table. They have to be a part of the conversation, because at the end of the day, we are educating your kids. The second would be the fostering positive school environments, and part of that deals with bringing in more mental health professionals, more behavioral specialists, if you will, so that they can have the ability to help those students and help those kids, whether it's with depression, whether it's with bullying, whether it's with anything that's mentally related. We want to give them the assistance they need. That's what we do as public schools. We provide and give them the assistance they need so that they can be successful in school. I think those are the two biggest things, I think, that are the most urgent needs for every school district.
That's great.
Also funding. Everybody knows that funding is important, and that seems to be the shortfall of all school districts. But at the end of the day, we have to work with the size pie that we have, and we have to be able to provide those things.
Yeah, funding and equity. Couldn't agree with you more. As a past state president, and looking out as far as all our state presidents right now, when you take this position, you really want to help out everybody. I mean, your basket goes pretty wide in the sense of trying to help everybody, satisfy all needs, etc. But your bandwidth is only about as many volunteers as you actually have, and about as much time as you have. Remember, we're all volunteers, as you know. So how do states themselves actually prioritize what the important issues are? You just mentioned what our priorities are at the national level for policy. What advice could you offer a state president in the sense of honing it down a little bit to actually fit within their bandwidth and what their importance issues are within their state?
Absolutely, Jim. I think, first of all, we have to be careful that we don't take on too much. And being a part of PTA, that's something that we often do. We want to take on, we want to say yes to everything, and you can't do everything.
Right.
So I think with states, I think you prioritize one or two things that you know that you can do, that you know that you can do well. And I think you have to have that conversation. Once again, it's your conferences, your conventions, your annual meetings. I think that's where you engage your membership and the local leaders in a conversation as to what's important to them, and really get them to hone in on those one or two things that are the most important, and you focus. And then you start to build a coalition around that aspect. You start to create the framework so that at the end of the day, not only do you set realistic goals, but you can meet those realistic goals as well. So I'd say always focus on one or two. Any more than that, then you're really starting to struggle, and especially with some states that have a smaller contingent, let them focus on those one or two things that they can do well.
So I want to make sure everybody is aware of all the tools that we actually have to offer, all the support, everything, the training, you name it. Again, can you actually go through, Marques, in the sense of some of the tools that we have to offer states in the sense of the resources and how to access those?
Well, we have a lot of tools, actually. In fact, I would dare you to find any other association that has more tools than we do. So let's start with the kind of the basic things, if you will. So for the legislation committee, if you will, we have our positions and resolutions. We take positions on certain things, and when we take positions on those things, that gives the states and local leaders the ability to go and advocate on behalf of those local issues. We set resolutions where, for instance, resolutions to prevent smoking, things of that nature. Those are great tools, those are great resources to start with because they're backed by data, they're backed by research. Another great way would be to go to pta.org, take action, if you will. There are a whole bunch of tools on pta.org, quite frankly, pta.org/advocacy. Click on that. there are so many things that one can find with respect to templates for ideas, our positions, our statements, our resolutions. You can look at key legislation, things of that nature. You can look at things that we've written in the past and see how they apply to the future. We also have a toolkit as well. The Advocacy Toolkit is a huge deal. That gives you the ability to not have to reinvent the wheel. That's the key factor here. You don't have to do anything brand new. You always have a resource and a place that you can go where you can click on something and get all the materials that you need. One other very important tool is our staff. The staff is well-versed. They're professionals. This is what they do, and they're there to help you. That is their goal, is to help you. And I think we need to utilize them more in that aspect as well. They're not there to take over, but they're there to help and assist and give you whatever tools, things that you need to get you prepared.
Yeah, I love the fact that we have so many different toolkits, and the Advocacy Toolkit is amazing for people. So please go to our website, go to your website, make sure that you check the box for all the legislative tools, the advocacy tools, etc. Talk a little bit about how easy it is to write a position statement. Because I don't think a lot of people know. They might think it's so difficult.
And it's not difficult, actually. A position statement, quite frankly, requires you to basically, I would say pick a few points if you want to, get a little bit of research if you want to, and just write those things down, write your ideas down. And the great part is you have a legislative committee that you can send those materials to, which they'll be able to vet, they'll be able to discuss, they'll sit down and discuss it with you if they need to. And then after that, we'll begin the process of drafting with the assistance of our staff. And from that point forward, if it works well, we'll send it to the board for their approval, and it'll become a position statement. But quite frankly, all it takes is just your idea and your start. What is it that you desire? What is it that you think we need to be advocating for, if you will, fighting for? Write it down. Put it down on some words. Put down some words. Do a little research if you want to, and then send it on to the committee, and let us start from there.
And depending on the position statement, you don't have to wait for one of the 4 times per year our board meets.
Exactly.
We can do it without objection to the board, or we'll actually engage the board in a phone conversation,
Absolutely.
which we've done. We want to make sure that we're responsive to the needs of our local states. And keep in mind, too, if you see a bill, especially on the national level, that comes out, and you find that there's an area that we want to get engaged in, but we don't have a resolution or a position statement, we can jump on board that so
Absolutely.
that we actually have some traction or some skin in the game, if you will, so that we can actually have one voice, one united voice in advocating for that. So thank you for letting them know how really easy it is to actually do a position statement. What I'd like to do is give you a call to action at this point, because at this point, many of us really care about the association. We care about our states, we care about our own communities, our own families, how our kids went through public education, etc. So we want to really ask that when you leave or transition out from your position as president, that you stay engaged. You would stay engaged, and one of the primary ways is as an advocate. We can really, really utilize your talent, your expertise. With all the many years that it took you to become president, we need that resource to stay embedded if you can for folks. We want to make sure also that now, before you leave, as well as transition this down to your president-elect or your replacement, to make sure that your meetings always have conversations about your short-term and long-term advocacy plans. This isn't something that you just wake up and respond to. You need to plan for these. We're, again, at Legislative Conference, and so this is a year in the making. You know this by heading up the committee, and then you run this for all of National PTA. And also explore how you're training and empowering the locals to actually leverage their voice. So at the state level, make sure your regions, your districts, your counties, your councils, your local units, elementary, middle, secondary, etc., are all equipped, have access to all the plethora of tools that you had mentioned, and use their voices at the stage that they're at. So locally, within the state, within the county, et cetera, however you're set up from a government standpoint. And of course, once a year, we all come in like we do this week on a national basis. And if you're a president, encourage or pass down these talents, these skills, this authority, this empowerment, either to a vice president of government relations, vice president of advocacy, most importantly to your president-elect, your replacement. This isn't something one and done. When you're gone, this is over.
No.
We need this to continue.
It has to.
122 years of continuing primarily on advocacy, and we need to make sure this stays strong. And also share the opportunities to represent your state in coalitions. Many of you have state coalitions. I know in Connecticut, that was the committee I just really enjoyed being. It's a coalition of all the framework of public education. And so you're with the superintendents, the elementary school principals, the secondary school principals, the commissioner of education, the state board of ed, local boards of ed, you name it, however your state coalition is set up. Make sure that you're a member. You might be the only volunteer member there.
That's right.
But be a member. Let your voice be heard there, etc. Join with your state government, join with your governor, etc. But really try to be an advocate at all levels. I also want to mention to you that we actually have the State PTA Leadership Institute at convention. So just a shout out, a quick commercial to that. We're going to feature Sherry Harley. She's the author of How You Can Say Anything to Anyone. I think I've been saying just about anything to anyone my entire life, but she's going to do it really, really well. And she's the founder of Candid Culture Workshop. And we also have a workshop track dedicated to state PTA officers. And they're going to cover a broad array of topics, such as board development, financial trends, parliamentary procedure, and advancing family engagement. So, Mark, we're at the end of our video log.
Yes.
Any parting remarks from LegCon 2019?
Keep advocating. I'm looking forward to seeing you all here. We're putting in work this week, and I'm looking forward to you all being a part of it. Thank you.
And I'm also going to add anything that gets passed this week. Are we going to take credit for
We're
it?
going
to take credit for everything that gets passed this week in the federal government. So that concludes our series of video logs. For me, as your president, thank you for all you do. Bye-bye.